Okay, our next speaker is going to be Simon Griffin, who is the CEO of Lifeline Neurodiagnostics.
So as Tom said, my name's Simon Griffin. I'm the CEO of Lifelines Neurodiagnostic Systems, and we've been around for about 18 years. And what we specialize in doing is collecting EEG in difficult places to record EEG. EEG is really the gold standard for looking at seizures. And so we're very much on the diagnostic side of things, helping people identify what kind of seizures that they're having. And so I want to just give you kind of an overview of the types of locations where EEGs can be recorded now comfortably and safely to assist in diagnosing what type of epilepsy or what type of seizure someone is having. Just to give you an idea of some of the things we get up to, Epilepsy Awareness Days is very important to us, and here we are supporting it. You'll see a gentleman holding a map of Africa there. He's in Tanzania, sorry, I'm going on the wrong part of the globe completely. And he actually has some of our equipment being used on patients in rural communities in Tanzania and having the data transmitted up into the cloud, so epileptologists here in the United States are able to assist in diagnosing patients who would otherwise be completely ostracized from society because they're deemed to be possessed in that part of the world. So we get involved in many things, but we're particularly excited and happy to be part of the Epilepsy Awareness Days. So EEG's been around for a long time. In fact, here are some of the very, very earliest EEGs ever recorded. And Hans Berger is considered the father of EEG. He was a German psychiatrist, and he recorded the very first seizures ever seen recorded on an EEG tracing. And so we owe everything to him, and over the years things have developed from very large paper-based systems that were in use really up until the late 80s, devices like the one you see on the bottom there. But now EEG systems have been condensed down into small portable devices that can be literally worn. And here's an example of an in-home video recording system. And so this would be an example of a device that could be taken home by a patient, or perhaps a technologist would visit the patient's home and actually set up a camera video solution. And then the subject can then be going about their normal daily activities. That's my now 21-year-old son, who was into Lego and the like back in the day. But an example of a child playing at home, having video recordings performed. It's an alternative to the hospital setting. It doesn't replace the hospital setting. Clearly, when you're being worked up for potential epilepsy surgery, things of that nature, you're going to be in a hospital setting for the recordings. But there are many children, or adults even, who don't experience, they go to the hospital their day for days and have everything's perfectly normal, and this is an alternate way that they can have recordings done in their day-to-day environment. The company's been around, as I say, since the year 2000, and there's an example of one of our original devices back in the day, and there's thousands of them in use all over the world. Video got added in about 2008, so it's really been the last decade where it's been possible to really record video EEGs in the home setting. But that's not the only difficult environment that we operate in. Some people's first seizures are very soon after birth, and a child that's perhaps been asphyxiated during birth and has infantile spasms and seizures of that type, they're in a neonatal intensive care unit. It's a particularly difficult environment to record EEG. And you can imagine wheeling in one of those great big EEG systems into this space. There's nowhere to put it. There's absolutely nowhere to go with the equipment. So we've worked very hard on designing technologies to really reduce the size of the device so these very early diagnoses can be made. This is, perhaps you've never seen one. Some of you may have spent time in the hospital in the epilepsy monitoring unit, and it's just fascinating to see, and that's why I wanted to show you this picture. This is sort of a typical epilepsy monitoring unit showing the behind the scenes look of all of the different videos and EEGs being monitored by expert technologists and physicians, keeping track of everything that's going on. But that's a very controlled environment, and as has already been alluded to, sometimes it can take a long time to get a proper diagnosis. And so the in-home type technologies provide some of those assistance. On the right there, you can see some new electrode technology that we've been working on. This was developed in Ireland in association with the University of Cork, very well-known Irish neonatal intensive care unit. And really in an effort to try and improve the speed of which electrodes can be applied to a neonate. So 2-3 o'clock in the morning, babies aren't born, nicely during working hours. And so, to have a technologist come in on call may take 2 or 3 hours. If you're in a top facility, you may not have to wait. They're often staffed 24/7 with the EEG technologists. But in many cases, that's not the case. And so we developed this electrode technology to allow nursing staff to quickly apply leads to an infant, to allow them to be monitored so that information can be seen at the earliest possible moment. This is another place where people often go after their first seizure, the emergency department. And again, similar experience. If you go to a top facility, it's very likely to have EEG technologists on staff available to be there very, very quickly. But that's not the case for the vast majority of emergency departments. So, folks get brought into the emergency department in some sort of altered state of consciousness. Is it seizure? Is it not seizure? Is it cardiac? What is it? And so we've developed devices to allow EEGs to be recorded very quickly and simply by the emergency room staff. Of course, the expert epileptologist isn't there. They don't sit around in the hospital 24/7. But these technologies, we use the cloud to allow this data to be transmitted so that it can be placed in front of an expert anywhere in the world, really, to provide a diagnostic and a guide much, much more quickly. The home actually is one of the hardest places to record EEGs because you really don't know what the electrical system is going to be like. A lot of people live in older homes that aren't properly grounded, and you're recording these very, very small signals. And so the home is an extremely difficult environment to record. And so with using the cloud today, it's possible for technologists or physicians to be remotely monitoring these studies as they take place in the home. So you can quickly see if there's a problem with the recording, if there's an issue with electrodes coming off or something of that nature, and it allows people to respond much more quickly and end up with a successful EEG. Because in the end, you spend 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours having a study done at home, and it's 72 hours of garbage data. You haven't learned anything. And so these technologies that allow remote connection and remote review allow us to intervene much more quickly in the event that there's a problem with the recording. And it's not just that. I put this one in specially. We have a seizure dog at the front there, but it's not just people. So surprisingly, a lot of interest in animal welfare, and we actually have some expert epileptologists from Canada who look at EEGs from dogs all over the world, and they upload them to the cloud, and they're able to give expert diagnosis. And I actually have quite a funny story about it, because the particular physician in question that provides these services, she's also expert in equine EEG, and she had a particular interest in recording horses while they were walking around in their corral. And so we actually developed a special version of our device that was worn on the shoulder of the horse with electrodes placed on the scalp, and then wirelessly transmitted the data to a rugged computer so she could sit there with a battery-operated computer on the edge of the corral watching the EEG from this horse. Well, when she first wanted to acquire the equipment, I didn't really feel like going up into the middle of nowhere Canada to show her the equipment. So I thought, well, I'm going to make a video and show her how this could work. So my son became the volunteer, and he did the old Monty Python, pretend to be a horse, galloping down our driveway, and I videotaped it and sent it to her, and she thought it was so funny she actually bought the equipment based on that alone. But it just goes to show it's not just humans that experience epilepsy, and our products are used to help animals all over the United States and all around the world. I think this is actually one of the most things I'm most proud about. Our technology is deployed globally for pharmaceutical research. So if you've ever enrolled in a pharmaceutical study, we now deploy systems all around the world, and we have technologists monitoring those recordings taking place continuously. So we're able to help pharmaceutical studies gather high quality data that they can then use in the determination of the effectiveness of their particular compound. And this is something that I'm especially proud of for no other reason than our expert technologists from the United States. 'Cause frankly, in the US, the quality of EEG performed in the United States is generally higher than most other parts of the world. Western Europe is pretty good, Australia is pretty good, but you get into Eastern Europe, third world countries, parts of Asia, the quality of EEG technologists is they just don't have the same training and expertise. And I'm so pleased to say that our team is able to help elevate the skill sets of technologists around the world. And we had wonderful letters coming from neurologists in countries like Hungary saying, you know, if it weren't for your team, now our staff from now on will always be better able to serve and support their patients. So that's something I'm probably most proud about, what we do. So that's all the places where we record EEG, and some of those are particularly difficult. And if you want to come and discuss any of those things, we've got our space out there, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it. But thank you very much indeed.
So we'll have just a time for a few questions. We've got one in the front.
I'm going to ask EEG. What's the longest period of time you do like an at-home EEG?
It's really up to this physician that's ordering the test, frankly. But we have clients who go many days. They can go a very long time. Usually if you go beyond 72 hours, really it's recommended the subject be reapplied, check the electrodes, and change batteries, things of that nature. But we've seen studies go 14 days or longer, but usually with some attention during that time period.
We do 72 hours in our facility, and then we really reset the electrodes after that time. You can safely leave those electrodes on the head for about 7 days without taking them off and reapplying them. We do 14 days in patients without having to reapply.
Any other questions for any of the panelists? Go ahead.
So the detect and respond BNS, does it, what would the model of that one be called?
So that's called Sentiva.
And does it also have a magnet as well?
It's got the magnet. So we like to say magnet's queen. Some people say magnet's king, but I say magnet's queen. So the magnet always wins. So if you're not sure if the auto-stim, we call it auto-stim, that automatic sensing device. If you're not sure if the auto-stim turned on, if you swipe the magnet, it still turns on. Okay. And if auto-stim had turned on, it stops auto-stim and the magnet still fires. So until we get the settings right and we're sure auto-stim's picking up your seizures, we still tell the families to swipe the magnet, just to be sure. And then once we get the settings perfect, and we have ways in clinic we can test the device to make sure that the computer timestamps the auto-stims and it timestamps the magnet swipes. So when you come back to clinic, we can check and see if auto-stim caught your seizure, and then we can tell you it's catching your seizures, you don't need to keep swiping the magnet. But you can still, magnet always wins. It's in charge. It's a pretty cool device, I think.
How long do the batteries last?
So 4 to 6 years, depending on the settings. So actually, it's kind of interesting. So we always think we want something to have the longest battery life until something new and better comes out. So the last one that came out that had an auto-stim feature they said 4 to 6 years, but now this one comes out, and the Sentiva has this day-night programming, which is totally cool. So I can do all these really fancy things with day-night programming, and the last one didn't have that, and now I'm wishing those batteries would die. So I so I'm like, oh, they made that one 6 years ago, and they actually didn't last 6 years, and now I want the new one, and I can't put it in, so then I have to be like creative and tell the insurance company the battery's dying because everything's dying. Maybe I can get it. So, but it's really interesting that we've done some data looking at our patients with what we call traditional. I don't know what people in the world call it. I call it traditional VNS, kind of the old VNS without the autostim feature. And patients who transition from old VNS to new VNS, the traditional VNS seizure reduction is about 62 to 65%. Just everybody lumped together. I can tell you which seizure types respond better or worse, but if you lump them all together, about 62 to 65%. With the new VNS, that's up to 75%. And there was just a study published out of England that confirmed that, and our data at CHLA is showing that as well. And we've put in a lot of the Sentivas. So the new device seems to work even better than the old one did. So something about that autostim, whether it's catching seizures faster and that's overall improving seizure reduction, that they may be catching seizures so fast that the patients don't know they're having it. Because you probably know this from EEG, sometimes you'll see the heart rate go up before there's even a clinical seizure. So it may be catching the seizure before the patient even knows that they have a seizure. So in essence, their seizure counts go down because they don't even know they had that seizure because it stops it before they have any clinical signs, which is really interesting.
And does it,
Go ahead.
I've heard that sometimes it can also help with like anxiety and depression.
It can, good question. So I didn't get that because I didn't want to go over the time because, we have a limit here. So it is used for depression in adults. So there's actually been formal studies that it got an FDA approval for depression. So it definitely treats depression in adults. We see these what we call positive side effects, which was the slide I had up when I was talking about the real side effects. My bad. So we see patients tend to be more alert. In kids, we see they do better in school, they have better learning skills. In adults, they tend to have improved memory and improved cognition. And then almost everybody has a faster recovery procedure. So patients tend to recover more quickly. If patients had slept for 3 to 4 hours, they tend to only need 20 to 30 minutes. So when you look at the whole day, we have patients who are down for 2 days after a seizure. And if it wasn't bad enough that you had a seizure, then you lost 2 days recovering from your seizure. So one seizure takes out 3 days, which totally stinks. So if you can recover in 20 minutes instead of 2 days, that's kind of a win-win. So we see that improved post-ictal time in almost everybody. And those improvements come before the seizure control. So it's not just we made your seizures better and took you off meds that you're brighter and more alert and do better at school and your job and everything. It's actually something different the VNS is doing, which we don't completely understand exactly what it does.
We had another question here.
Yeah.
So I've been competing in sports for a long time, but I just stopped moving because I have epilepsy. So
Yeah.
can I still be meaning physical with the
Yeah, we don't restrict with that physical activity. I don't think anybody with a brain should play football. That's just my own personal opinion. But we don't restrict sports with VNS. No, I can play hockey with VNS.
But it won't rip out.
No, it doesn't rip out. It's sewn in. It's completely inside. Yeah, they put those wire around and they tether it in place and it's sewn into place. It doesn't move. It doesn't come out.
I feel like wrestling.
No, it shouldn't be a problem. It depends. Every surgeon's different. In my institution, we don't restrict sports with it in. Yeah, I can't speak for every surgeon. Only mine.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
They sew it in there pretty good. It's inside.
What type of surgeon implants?
So we use a neurosurgeon, but it can be anybody who knows head and neck anatomy. So some centers use ENT, some use head and neck surgeons. So the vagus nerve is pretty easy to find. It's in the carotid sheath with the carotid vessels. You just open the vessels and the nerve is pretty easy to identify if you're familiar with that area. It's a pretty short surgery. It takes about 20 minutes to put it.
And then how do you change the batteries?
So once the wires are in, they never come out. So the wires are good forever. The wires are actually pretty well made, and we've not had a broken wire. Gosh, knock on wood. I think my last broken wire was 2005, so it's been a really long time. So the wires are really well made and don't need to come out again. When the generator dies, they take the whole one out and get a brand new one. So yeah, you're good. And they just unplug the wires, take the generator out, put it back in. So a small incision, that's like 10 minutes to replace a generator.
Ma'am, go ahead. Question in the front.
Yeah. If now there's metal detectors everywhere, that would be something that you...
It doesn't go off. Yeah, titanium. It doesn't set off the metal detector.
So it doesn't set off?
No.
You can literally
Go walk right through. Yeah, we give you a little card when you get it that says you have an implantable device like any company would. And we just usually tell people to describe it like a pacemaker for epilepsy because most people have an idea of what a pacemaker is.
Right.
But it doesn't set off the metal detectors at the airport. No, completely safe to use. Yep, you can just go live your life and not worry about it. Yep.
Okay, one last question here.
Does it affect if you're going to have a test like an MRI?
It does, so good question. So because it's operated by a magnet, that was very good that you thought of that. So it has to be turned off before you get an MRI. There are some MRIs that you can't do. MRI of a certain area of the cervical spine you can't do with it in because the wires can heat up. But MRIs of the brain can be done and MRIs of the joints can be done. So CT scans and other scans are okay. So it's something that you want to talk with your doctor about. We feel like we need to stop seizures. And if some point down the future a patient needs an MRI of that area, I'd rather take it out at that point because I can image the body in other ways. But you can get an MRI of the brain, which is most important to us as neurologists.
So I just remind you that everybody here on the panel has a table, so feel free to go visit with them. There are other device manufacturers here as well. Empatica has a table, Smart Monitor has a table, and there may be more. So please ask questions at the tables. Thank you for being here, and let us know if we can be helpful or put you in touch with the people you want to talk to. Thanks.